Okay. Get started. All right, we've all come to the right place this afternoon. You're going to hear from a couple of local sustainability rock stars as far as I'm concerned. I teased them up a little bit earlier today, but now you get to hear from the actual people doing the real hard work on sustainability. You're going to hear from Eric and Marisa from Sing Sing Hill and Pleasant Valley Brewery. And we hope to have a good conversation about what's happening in the two breweries and really, listen to your questions and also get your ideas. Like, what are some things that, based on this, you could do? And I recognize a few of you from other sessions, so I know you've got lots of things going on as well. So we want to make sure this is teed up as a roundtable discussion. We're not at a roundtable, but we can certainly talk through these things together. My name is Ben Foster, so you may have seen me earlier today. I work with large brewers, and I'm happy to give that perspective as well as we go through, but really I'm here to facilitate so you can hear from the folks that are your peers in the state that are doing great things. So excited about that. I'm going to turn it over first to Marisa, and I'm going to give an intro and then feel free to run on through.
Hello. Hey everyone, my name is Marisa Lomonaco. I'm from Hudson Valley Brewery in Beacon, New York. I'm excited to be in a room full of people who want to talk about sustainability, and I'm glad you guys are all here. I'm also really glad that the conference this year has a bigger focus on sustainability. And I think, every year that we come to this, we're always really encouraged when we leave because all of us are obviously facing the same challenges. So when we get a chance to have these kind of talks, I think it's really cool because we can all learn from each other in what we're doing or not doing. So really excited about that. I'd also just like to mention that I'm not an expert in this field at all. And a lot of things that we are doing aren't necessarily our ideas and they're not new ideas. But we're hoping like some of them, whenever we share them, we're hoping that it might inspire other people to do the same thing. And we're definitely looking forward to later too, if everybody in this room probably has something that would inspire us to maybe make some changes at our brewery too. So I wanted to talk just a little bit first about kind of how we started building our sustainability program, because I think sometimes it feels like a huge task to try and undertake it all. I kind of just broke that down into 3 different categories about how we got started, and how we really sort of built a supportive network, which I think is kind of the only way you can do these things. We can't do them in a vacuum. We need a lot of help. We need a lot of people to help us, not only within our company, but in the industry and then in our communities too. So the first group, I just want to talk a little bit about our company. All these guys over here in this picture. We're a pretty small company. We're about 17 employees. We make about 3,000 barrels, a little bit less than 3,000 barrels of beer each year. So that can kind of give you a sense of what our scale is compared to what your scales might be. And I think obviously the solutions for sustainability are generally pretty similar, but when you're talking about different scale operations, I think it really sort of changed what is manageable, what might work for your business versus our business. So, excuse me. So really, I think the first step for us was sort of baking in sustainability as a core value to our company. A few years ago, we sort of went through an exercise where we talked about what the mission and the core values of our company was. We made sustainability a key sort of pillar of that. And I think that's been really useful in just the way our employees and our team sort of frames decision making when they know that's an ultimate value for the company is to try and be a more sustainable company. We also really tried to build advocates in like all the departments of our brewery too. It's implementing some sustainability strategies is obviously like a disruptive thing to your company. People are used to making things the same way, used to doing the same process the same way. So, essentially talking to anybody about changing it up sometimes can be not the easiest thing. So, I feel really lucky that some of the advocates that we have in our company are in this room right now. We, like I said, having people from packaging to our brewing operations, our administration, the front of the house team, everybody sort of plays different roles in how we implement some of our strategies. Also, a really important step for us was just making sure we had some systems in place and tools and training. So most of the stuff that I think I'm really going to be talking about later is just is more sort of waste diversion and recycling practices that we've started. And a big component of that is making sure everybody knows what to do with their waste, especially in all different departments of the company. It's a little bit different, making sure we had a really good center where they can take all of their recyclables to, that's clearly marked, really understandable, and we try and spend a little time, maybe once a quarter or something, just sort of refreshing everybody's memory about where stuff goes, and also just making sure that those systems are sort of implemented on your customer facing side too. So making sure your compost, where all of your customers are taking their trash, that they have the option to possibly do it to put it in the right space so it can be either recycled or composted or diverted basically from the landfill. So those are a few strategies we sort of worked on with our team. We also do a lot of team building activities with our whole company. The picture here is every Earth Day we do a volunteer with the community to do an Earth Day cleanup, where we are sort of positioned between the Fishkill Creek, a creek, and a greenway trail. So we go along the train tracks and we pick up trash. This was trash we picked up last year, and we're going to be doing it again this month at the end of April. And I think that's always a really good time for you to start talking about this stuff with your team, or pick a few different exercises that might work really well. The second group that really helped us figure out how to build a sustainability program is just our industry partners, right? So finding local sources for ingredients is not easy. We're in the Hudson Valley, and it's a pretty rich agricultural area, so we're lucky to have people like Hudson Valley Malt right in our backyard, and a bunch of other local farms. So we're being able to source more local ingredients has been a huge factor in us sort of building our system. And then also just talking to suppliers. A lot of the luck that we've had is from, potentially getting things from people where you see a problem, this is generating too much waste. And I'll give you a good example of that. Country Malt, which is a grain supplier for us, has we talked to them about the fact that we had too many super sacks. We don't know what to do with super sacks. They're filling our dumpster up. They're a huge sort of industry-wide problem. They agreed to take them back. So talk to your suppliers if you have something in your waste stream that's obviously a problem. It's something you can't solve on your own. I think the more we talked to them about it last year, and they didn't seem like that would be an opportunity. And a year later, they're taking their super sacks back. We also when we work with Hudson Valley Malt, they're also doing the same. They were using the super sacks that we get our grain in. And then the other part of our industry that I think was really important too was working with our other brewery neighbors. So we're in a the Hudson Valley, there's a lot of breweries around us, and just being able to talk to other breweries to find out what they're doing has been hugely helpful. I'd like definitely point to Industrial Arts that helped us build like our hard to recycle program. So I'll be talking a little bit more about that, but we use a company called TerraCycle to recycle a lot of things that you typically would see as being like maybe end of life, like pallet straps, Mylar bags, Mylar hot bags, filmy plastic, that kind of thing. So Industrial Arts was kind of already doing the system, and through our friendship with them, we talked about some of the shared problems we have, and we now are able to work together to co-freight those materials to TerraCycle. So you might have a resource just right in your neighborhood of someone who could help, and definitely take advantage of that, because I think we probably wouldn't be able to do some of that stuff if we didn't have help from our brewery friends. And then the next category is our community. So I recommend, like, if you have the time, join your local conservation groups. They're usually every municipality has one. In Beacon, we have a group called the Conservation Advisory Committee, which I joined a few years ago. It really helped our business align with the programs that the community is trying to implement, and that's been really exciting. We have been able to align with them on a bunch of things. Most recently, we started a community compost pickup for the municipality, and we sort of helped them implement some of the stuff. There's a pickup site right in our parking lot. And we ended up deciding to go with the same compost hauler, a commercial composter that the city is using. So they basically pick up our organics and compost in the same run that they're getting the rest of the communities in. So definitely take advantage of all the connections you can make in your municipality. Go to your transfer station. Talk to your DPW guys. Figure out what they're separating, what they're for instance, at our transfer station, they separate metal, cardboard, and electronics. So we know that we can do that every week. That's something that's already happening. I think everybody's heard of the statistics about recycling are pretty low when it's single stream. So whatever you can do to separate your recycling with your municipality, the better chance it has to be recycled. So definitely go bug them. Parks Department too has been really helpful for us in just finding solutions for some of our hard to recycle stuff that they actually want to reuse for some of their operations. So that's really kind of like where we look to get started. I'll talk more specifically now about the things that we are implementing. Like I said before, we're not experts, and there's a lot of things we wish we could be doing more, but this is kind of where we're starting. So everyone's heard, reduce, reuse, recycle, repurpose, so I just wanted to frame it in that framework that everyone kind of already understands. The first, section of that is reducing our waste. So a lot of that has to do with just like diversion, where like if you're not sending it into a landfill or to be incinerated, where else could you send things? So the first one of the, I think, most obvious for everyone is spent grain. Like, what can you do with spent grain? It's obviously like a huge volume of, like, as far as byproducts from the brewing process, it's a huge volume of what we have to deal with. Our solution to that is we were able to connect with a local farm, and we bring all of our spent grain that gets used as cattle feed. So that's been a really awesome solution for us. They're not too far from us, and I think like if you can find a farm in your area, they'd probably be pretty willing to take your spent grain because it's obviously a cost savings to them, so they're not buying feed for their livestock. So that's a good way to divert from landfills. Compost and yard waste is another good way to divert from a landfill or an incinerator, depending on where you are and what your municipality does with your trash. We use a commercial compost hauler for all of our food organic products, and then our yard waste gets composted at our local transfer station. So those are some solutions that we have to sort of lower the amount of waste that comes from our brewery. We also, I just wanted to talk a little bit about circular solutions that are really awesome. The picture, like on the right, is pallet wraps, like reusable pallet wrap that you can use instead of shrink wrapping pallets to move around your facility. I believe these come from palletwrapswithaz.com. I could be wrong. So they're a really good way to sort of pallet wrap is probably one of the big problems that I see as far as waste in our industry. It's used for everything, and it's hard to deal with. So trying to avoid using it as much as possible is great. Another circular solution I'm showing here too is just working with a grain supplier who's willing to take back their super sacks and reuse them. So that's another good way to reduce. Reusing things is always better than recycling things whenever possible. So we do that with super sacks. We do that with Pactex, which I think is a pretty cool process that I haven't really seen a lot of other people doing. We found that they're super reusable, and our team figured out a way to basically clean and sanitize them in our mash tun. So we'll do that every 2 months. We spend a lot of time sourcing Pactex from customers. We also worked with like big retailers, big box beer retailers like Halftime or other, you might have a different one in your location, and other breweries too who collect them from their customers. We take them back, we'll wash and sanitize them, we'll let them dry, and then we reuse them in our packaging. And if anyone has any questions about how we're doing that, we're happy to sort of show you exactly how we do it. Plastic pallets, and can slip sheets are also really cool. It's basically like the Ball Corporation where we get most of our cans from. They're using. They basically charge us a deposit so that they can assure that the materials are coming back to them, right? So in between, like we'll make sure we keep all of their plastic pallets and their slip sheets, the slip sheets that go in between the can layers, and they'll take those. They want to take those back. So that's like another really good example of a good circular solution that's happening already in the industry that you can take advantage of. And I think a good example of how maybe other suppliers might be able to afford to make those changes to like move to more reusable resources, like they're technically charging us as the customer for that, so they're not really like feeling it in their bottom line or whatever. So I think the more we talk to suppliers about coming up with better ideas for how they're bringing stuff to us, and especially when it's people who bring stuff and then have to come back on a regular basis as we go. So another one is wood pallets. Don't ever buy wood pallets if you can avoid it. It's completely unnecessary in most cases. There's pretty much somebody in your area who's always trying to get rid of pallets. We found like Facebook Marketplace and other resources for that. We drive around, we work with our local hardware store. Anytime we need pallets for like our distribution, we make sure we get those, we don't buy them. So that's also a really good reusable resource. The next thing, I think that sort of the next thing in the process would be repurposing things. So if we can't reduce how much we're using of them, we can't reuse them, how can we repurpose some of those materials? Ben talked about this a little bit in his presentation this morning, but during the pandemic, we were shipping a lot of beer, like I think a lot of other people were. And we were using soy-based peanuts, but they came in giant plastic bags. So we had this huge clear filmy plastic problem that was sort of like piling up. We obviously, as a brewery, get a lot of cardboard. There's a lot of stuff that comes to us in cardboard boxes. So we thought to ourselves, like, there must be a better solution than us using all of this plastic all the time. For the packaging. So we purchased a cardboard shredder, and we now use all the cardboard that comes into us as our packaging material for everything that we ship out. And Ben gave me a great idea this morning about making sure that's we let the community know about that so that they can use it too, and hopefully avoid buying plastic bubble wrap. So, and we haven't had any problem with it. It's been just as good as bubble wrap, and just has like kept our bottles and cans and everything. So I think that's always a really good solution. Metal drums, again, this is like one of the reasons why you should really go talk to your your different municipal departments. We bring all of our metal drums to our transfer station, and the DPW and Parks Department uses them in parks around Beacon as trash receptacles. So that's always kind of cool when we see something that was like that we know came to us and is now getting reused for another purpose. We also work with a local community organization that takes all of our plastic drums and does workshops for rain collection. So they'll do like community workshops, like where they convert the plastic drums into like a rain collection bin for residents, which is I think a really good use for them too. And then plastic buckets is something we get tons of also. So we are always trying to use, find resources for people who might want to use those, farmers. The picture in the top is we worked with the pilot compost program in Beacon to give these like the smaller buckets out as like a compost bin like for your kitchen. So we do that every Earth Day. So yeah, that's right. And then obviously recycling is sort of the end, is the last step. Like some of the stuffs we're just not going to have, we're not going to be able to reuse it. We're not going to be able to repurpose it. So how do we recycle it responsibly? We have a big recycling center in the back of our brewery. So everything is like labeled and pretty well organized as far as like what goes where. So that's part of the training that I was talking about before that we do with our staff, so everyone knows where to put things properly. The stuff that we just generally recycle with our transfer station and separate is metal, cardboard, aluminum, and electronics. There's a lot of other things that are harder to recycle, and I think you'll probably find a lot of those things in your dumpsters and in your waste stream. Things like Mylar hot bags, plastic pallet straps, plastic wrap, and or pallet wrap and clear filmy plastic. Plastic label backing, so it's PET plastic that comes pretty much, if anybody is canning their beer and using plastic labels, it usually comes on a big heavy roll of PET plastic as well. That's been a problem for us. Super sacks and grain bags, and then the gloves as well. So we worked with Industrial Arts to find a recycler. We use a company called TerraCycle that's based out of New Jersey, and we basically collect all of these materials until we get maybe like 6 pallets or something, and then we work with Industrial Arts to co-freight those materials to TerraCycle, and they find ways to repurpose them into other things, which is pretty cool. So a lot of these things we thought at one point were just sort of the end of the road, but it turns out people are finding uses for them, so that's pretty cool. And then I just wanted to throw this up there here to just like depress everybody a little bit, but obviously the industry we're in is in a way inherently unsustainable. Not completely, but there's a lot of big challenges. So this is my to-do list, I guess. It's definitely stuff on here that seems maybe possible in the near future, and some stuff that probably is only possible in the very distant future. But I'm happy to talk to anybody who has any ideas about stuff on this list, about solutions and coming up with just better processes for them. So I think a lot of times at these talks, we all talk about what we're doing, but I think it's also really important to talk about what we're not doing, and how we can figure out maybe to do a better job. So I think that's the end of my spiel.
Great, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, guys. I'm gonna pass it off to Eric now. He's got some really cool stuff too.
So just a quick pause. 30 questions, thoughts, comments from anyone while Eric's getting ready. Go ahead.
Just question about the tech use. Any feedback from distributors or customers in terms of is that first pack tech the best click, and then is there any decline in actual holding out of cans? Like somebody's walking out, the can falls out more common when it's third pack.
Not in our experience. It's hard for us to tell how many life cycles the pack techs have had when they come to us.
Yeah.
But we haven't had anyone complain about it, which is great. And we don't have a pack teching machine. We do it by hand.
Yep.
So it makes it a little bit easier for us to handle. I think if you have a pack tech machine, it's not possible because sometimes they are bent a little bit. We've also done a lot of testing with making sure that when the processing we're using to clean them is actually cleaning them and sanitizing them, and we're really confident with that too. So I think that's definitely an easy strategy. That seems very much like low-hanging fruit to us, and not a lot of. We really haven't seen a lot of other places that are doing it, which is honestly good for us because we're able to source a lot of the pack techs without a lot of competition for them. I think I got picked up a bunch this morning from the cheers this morning. Yeah. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Do you have any concerns or how do you mitigate, you're talking about TerraCycle taking things like nitrile gloves or giving farmers or community members things like buckets and plastic drums? Do you have a process for making sure that that's, I would be a little squeamish about giving someone a drum that held caustic or PAA and then telling them they can use it for rain collection,
Right.
without knowing that I'd really clean the hell out of it beforehand.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially what we do. Is we really clean the hell of it beforehand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly we test either for residual dirt on it or pH tested for the caustic stuff. So when the bin it runs water out, we can test the pH and say it's close to 7. We're confident that we can touch it, put stuff in it, and move it around. But yeah, you don't want too much caustic acid in your rainwater collection.
No. But
Good
being able
question.
to do this to somebody is great because drums take up a lot of space in the dumpster and there's no reason they should be covered.
Yeah, it's just just small steps of like you're saying, finding those problems and usually easy solutions to it.
My chemical supplier at the Westbury worked out, they took it back and we used them.
Yeah, there definitely are sources out there for people who will come pick them up for that as well. We're just kind of. Right. Well, I mean, that's why recycling co-oping is on my list. I think that is probably the next step of this. So, you know, we were really fortunate to have Industrial Arts as a resource. We're much smaller than them, and they have had a lot more experience because they have a much bigger volume of waste that they need to deal with. So, just having another resource where we could figure out what to do with everything. But I think that is like a definite goal of mine is how do we create a Hudson Valley collective, you know, similar to the way they do in Maine, where they have a co-op for all the like, again, everyone pretty much, you know, has the same waste products. So it's pretty scalable. It's pretty replicable. Most people who are figuring out what to do with these materials afterwards want a huge volume of them before they'll even really talk to you. So if you have the sort of collective energy of, you know, 20 breweries in the Hudson Valley or 20 breweries in the Finger Lakes all sort of pooling their resources together, I think that would be a really cool step for New York State. I'll be talking more about that to everyone just around the conference too.
All right, thank you. Eric?
All right, off to Eric.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Eric, one of the co-owners of Sink Kill Brewery in Austin. We'll start off with some positive reinforcement. We're not allowed to say that beer is healthy for you, but so far we're still able to make claims like we're saving the environment. So I've always been a big fan of quality craft beer, but my interest in starting up a brewery was born out of the anti-fracking movement. As you can see in the slide, I used to drag my young children up to protest alongside me up in Albany. And now this young man is about to turn 15 years old, and he still works alongside me at the brewery as our youngest employee. But I attribute a lot of the success of the anti-fracking campaign to the Farm Brewery Act. As most of you know, it's a piece of legislation that's designed to tie the burgeoning craft beverage business with the agricultural industry. So, obviously offering farmers a revenue stream that's non-destructive. They, instead of leasing land to the fossil fuel interests, they're able to sell a premium crop of beer ingredients to New York brewers. So just as this act was turning into law, I met my partner, Matt Curtin, and our wives grew up together, and we both moved to Austin the same year, and he was brewing as a home brewer. He'd been brewing for over 2 decades, and his beer was incredible, and this was, something that now I could take my interest in environmental activism and actually, put it to use. And so we worked so hard to prevent fracking in New York, and now, here's an opportunity to create a business that supports the alternative. So that's how it all kind of got started. So obviously it was all about the ingredients. Our goal had always been to produce beer that's 100% New York ingredients, and I think we achieved that goal in year 3, right? You've probably seen Ted from New York Craft Malt outside. He and Patricia and Dennis and Jeanette from Hudson Valley Malt. They've been into our tap room, and they've tasted the finished product of the ingredients that they're providing to us. And we take great pride in being in an industry that can have such a short supply chain, because not many people have that advantage, that you're directly communicating what your needs are, and they are interested and they care about providing us with the best quality product, and because they enjoy the end result. So we wanted to focus also on sourcing equipment from New York State whenever possible. So we got our brewing system, vessels, and our canning line all from within New York State. It was important to us the efficiency of all of these systems. So being able to have a thermal fluid system rather than steam, it's a 2-stage instead of a 3-stage. So you're basically saving, you're 30% more efficient that way. Water conservation obviously was a concern of ours. There was a Brewers Association study a couple years ago that rated the brewing process at worst 10-to-1 water consumption to beer production, and at best 3-to-1. So the last time we ran the numbers, I'm happy to say we were even better than 3-to-1. So there are all kinds of things that you can do to conserve water. Repurposing it is, one of the biggest things, using obviously like plate chillers to cool your wort and then transfer the heat to the water to then wash the vessels. So you save energy and water at the same time. And then being able to compost the spent grain, and we went with zero waste policy for all of our events and everything. Anything that comes into our space that's for single use has to be compostable. Then we looked into sourcing the power. Obviously, after fighting against fracking, we were not interested in having natural gas powering anything. So we purchased an electric brew house. With electricity, we're able to source all of our energy from 100% renewable resources. Currently, Columbia, some grad students had approached us about doing a sustainability study on greenhouse gas emissions. So the goal is to eventually have this survey that will very clearly lay out where we're expending most of our emissions, but also give us goals for the future and how to continue to conserve. And one of the things we're thrilled about is working with the schooner Apollonia. This came to us through Dennis, and he hooked up a bunch of his customers, including Hudson Valley Brewing, and a lot of breweries, basically from Hudson, New York, all the way down to Brooklyn. And the idea is to bring sail freight back onto the Hudson and send raw materials down the river and bring finished goods back up. So, we've been talking to him this year, and hopefully, we'll be able to get more involved in the finished product aspect of that. But right now, we're taking advantage of having our grain deliveries. We did over 10,000 pounds of grain in 2022, which obviously we'll get the numbers from Columbia shortly. Be interested to see what how that what the actual figures are in greenhouse gas emissions saved. But it's basically we've taken off five tractor trailers off the road in the course of 6 months, and we're a very small operation. So if you can imagine, how many breweries do you think are involved? Like probably 5. I know Jason from Strong Row Was that John?
Millhouse does it?
Yeah.
Millhouse.
So there's a bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the impact of just one schooner on the Hudson is it could be a big deal. And what Sam is doing is amazing. He not only sails the grain down to us, but then gets on his electric bike that's recharged through a solar panel on the boat and barefoot bikes all the grain uphill to us every month. So he's a maniac, but he's an incredible human being if you ever get a chance to meet him. I think that they're going to be screening the documentary, the Windship documentary here either tonight or tomorrow, but I'm not sure exactly where. Hopefully we'll figure that out. So then we really wanted to launch on Earth Day. Ossining has Westchester County's largest Earth Day celebration, and although our tap room wasn't going to be open for another month, we really wanted our official opening day to be on Earth Day and participate in the festival. So we were able to make that happen, and we've been lead sponsors of the event ever since. And obviously, when it comes to taking measures to positively impact the environment, no one should be doing this alone. We should all play a role. So it's great to work with so many fantastic organizations throughout Westchester County. We did when we had shut down for COVID, obviously, and immediately when we opened, we did a fundraiser for the Federated Conservationists of Westchester County, and it was our first attempt at a hybrid beer tasting, a digital and in-person beer tasting. And we did that because we knew that although everyone was very supportive of first responders and even businesses like ours, they wanted to see us survive COVID, but all of the fundraising methods for environmental organizations were kind of put on hold, so their coffers had been incredibly deteriorated at that point. So that was a focus of ours to start there with our events. And we also donate the use of our tap room to like farmers clubs. We partner with Riverkeeper, that Nislizy, Matt and our wives, who actually go into the Sing Sing Kill once a year, and our sweep team leaders cleaning it up. And while we work very diligently at the tap room to make sure that everyone is well lubricated afterward. Let's see, did I forget anything? In Clearwater, we also work with Clearwater. We've sent cans out on their voyages or fundraising voyages, and the Green Ossining Sustainability Partnership, we've been members of that since they initiated the program. It was a 10-point program. Now this year it became 12 points. They found 2 new ways to conserve. So we've been the only business that has gotten a seal every year and has hit every single marker. So it's great to have an organization like that pushing businesses to do better. And it's also great just to be at our Brewers Conference that has a focus on sustainability this year. I think the impacts of climate change are getting more and more obvious every year, and hopefully people can get behind the beer industry. Like if people understand, like in order to continue to have this product that everyone loves so much, like we have to take action and improve our behavior so we can conserve the land, air, and water in order to have grain and hops and water. So, all right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric. So do we have any questions for Eric? I've got a couple for them, but just wanted to pause. So the question for you each here would be, out of all these projects that you've done, can you give us an example of something that like surprised you that it went really well? Like, hey, here's something that turned out the way we wanted to. And on the other side, what's something like, oh man, we probably should have done that differently? Because those real world stories of what worked and what didn't would be interesting.
I think the pack tech cleaning process has definitely been something that like evolved for us. We like decided we wanted to do it, and we started doing it by hand, which was crazy. It was time consuming, probably not very efficient use of water. Didn't really clean them the way we wanted to. So that was a really cool example of having, like I said before, having advocates in all your departments working on a problem together. So Mike and Jamal, who are both here right now, are brewers, and they figured out a way to do it in the mash tun that's so much more efficient, so much more quick, and probably gets them way cleaner. So that was cool. I think that at some point everybody was expecting to. I was expecting to hear the staff be like, "You need to stop doing this. This doesn't make any sense." So that's definitely an example of something that went good and bad at first.
Oh, there you go. And 2 for 1 there. See how efficient she is? You got 2 for 1 in that. All right.
One of the things that we've been trying to do for, ever since opening is move away from commercial composting and be able to use local farms. So that's something that there's been a lot of stops and starts, and we're hoping that eventually we can kind of improve that aspect and get the spent grains, to be actually, their highest level of benefit as a food source. So that's the one place where we really are focusing on trying to improve right now.
Thank you. Any other questions? Is this all getting really thirsty right now? Yeah, go ahead.
Say a little bit more about the thermal liquid instead of steam in the brew house.
Yeah, so with the thermal fluid, you're heating up the thermal fluid in the jackets, which heats up the beer. A steam system, you heat water to turn it into steam to heat the beer. So you change, there's an extra stage of, changing.
Phase of that water.
Right, exactly. So.
It's like a glycol-ish solution?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, so every time you don't have to, change the molecular structure of something, you gain a level of efficiency. So.
And that's the full heating of the brew
Yeah.
house, no element?
No.
Electric stuff?
No, I mean there's the unit that just heats the thermal fluid, and then that circulates through the jackets.
What's the volume of that? What your brew house volume?
We're a 3-barrel system.
Okay.
So it's easy, obviously, on one hand, like if you're a huge corporation, it's easy because you have the financial resources to do things. But it's also, we don't have the financial resources, but we are small enough that, and like Marisa said earlier, being owner-operators, we make the decisions, and if we feel like we should be doing something, then we just do it. Like we don't have to go to corporate and ask for permission.
But those systems are available. I think they build them up to 30 barrels.
Oh, yeah.
Insane.
Cool. Where's it from?
All over. Yeah. I'm sure if they can do it, somebody else can figure that out.
Out of all these ideas, which ones seem like most interesting or most achievable, or something that like, hey, we can do that? What do you guys think? Any thoughts?
Going off of Marissa's point about repurposing, it seems like there can be a lot advantageous aspects to that. I don't think a lot of people see through.
But it sounds like when you communicate with your community really well, like you can get to a resolution that's better and eco-friendly. So I'd be curious to see what else could be part of it.
Yeah, speaking of repurposing, we now Dennis uses like a paper sack for grain. We don't do the major what are they called, super sacks? Super sacks. Yeah, but before we had the Mylar bags, and it sucked because we kept on collecting them because we couldn't bring ourselves to just fill the dumpsters with them constantly. So we got rid of our whole entire inventory one year for a Riverkeeper sweep. It became the garbage bags that they used to clean up the Hudson. So that was, 1 year that was a good purpose for those. But yeah, there's always kind of opportunities that arise if you're looking for them. But again, like Marisa, talked about it extensively. Like, you have to sort of push people. You have to talk to people. You got to push them. And people will, will bend because they know it's the right thing to do. We host a craft beverage corral at the summer concert series down at our waterfront every Friday all summer long, and we come down there with compostable cups, and they don't put out compost bins, so we have to have this conversation every year, where are the compost bins, who's, where's the signage, who's maintaining it, all that kind of stuff, because unfortunately our parks department, they don't want to be bothered, but you have to bother people with this, and eventually eventually will become the norm, but you have to just do the work to push it to become the norm.
Yeah, just to touch on that too, I think it's also, I think a lot of the resources where we came up with stuff for repurposing really come from, a lot of it comes from volunteering with our city and being on a board that's advising the city on conservation programs. So just being a part of that, I'm able to sort of align with these other places that that have for instance, our Earth Day cleanup every year. Our Department of Rec is involved in that, and last year he said, "Oh, I'm just gonna go to Home Depot and pick up a bunch of buckets." And I was like, "Stop! Do not buy a bucket ever again. Come to us. We have plenty of buckets. We'll always be able to provide those to you." So I think really connecting with your city officials, they'll start knowing to come to you. Now our Parks Department, they'll come by if they have a problem. We try and figure out how we can accommodate some of the stuff. So I mean, we're lucky we're in a city, so it's resourced a little bit more than maybe a rural brewery has. And the community is very tight-knit, so it's a smaller city, and it's easy to sort of keep in touch with the different programs that are happening too. So definitely whatever you can do to volunteer within your community will only sort of point you to the places where you can sort of piggyback on other programs that are happening too. I think that's been really helpful for us.
Thanks, yeah. And I wonder, just one more question, I guess, is, do you belong to a chamber of commerce? I'm just thinking that sometimes the diversity of businesses might have needs for some of that repurpose, or they might have something you could use, or not necessarily just in the community, but maybe small other entrepreneurs oh yeah, I can use those buckets for something I'm doing.
Yeah, we are part of our regional chamber of commerce and our local one. We aren't as active in it, which is definitely a goal for me for this year, is to just sort of talk, in the work that we've been able to discuss with other breweries, that's been really successful because we all obviously have the same issues, right? We're all dealing with the same waste and similar problems in infrastructure and that stuff. So that's kind of where I've tried to focus first. But a lot of the businesses on our main street and in our community, they have the same problem. And I'm definitely going to be again, the idea about the packaging material, I'm excited to go to them and say if you guys need anything, come to us first. But yeah, that's a really good suggestion too.
Yeah, our Chamber of Commerce is not very green.
Yeah.
But runs Green Ossining, we were talking because when you brought up green drinks, I reached out to her and said, what happened to green drinks? Why aren't we still doing that? And like a lot of the stuff pre-pandemic, especially it seems the environmental groups, their gatherings have not really come back. So we're going to bring green drinks back and start like having these meetings with local businesses, and because before, once a month we would meet at somebody else's business and talk about have this kind of discussion, like what are we doing, what are other people doing, how can we support one another, and that just all ended. And but hopefully after she's focused on Earth Day obviously right now, but then once that passes, then we're going to start doing these monthly green drinks and getting all the businesses back together on this again.
That's what I think is so encouraging overall, is that you can see that you are catalysts in your community. You said, I find I belong to the Chamber of Commerce up in Saratoga Springs. Same thing, like they don't really get it or they don't embrace it. But of course, not universally, but for the most part. So since you're really leaning into sustainability and what it means to you, because you're connected to the community, you're connected to agriculture, connected to the environment in ways that maybe other businesses wouldn't be. So it's not as sensitive, right? It's an agricultural product. Well, they're making something that's not dependent on the weather and the environment. Maybe they don't think about it as much, but bringing that to them is just another benefit and something that we can all be proud of.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of activism is just about annoying people and like talking to them about it incessantly until something maybe clicks or changes their mind. And I think the more kind of like good solutions that are really replicable that we can come up with as a group that don't cost you a ton of money to implement are sort of one-to-one switches. Those things are like a really good place to start. And I think, even just this year having the conference have a piece of sustainability attached to it is a big step in the right direction. I know I myself, along with a lot of other people, were definitely squeaky wheels to a lot of board members throughout the year, just asking for that to be part of the agenda. So hopefully it just gets a little bit more baked in. We don't have to have it be like the theme, but it's just a part of like how we kind of operate our businesses. And I think that it sounds like there's a lot of good energy coming with that, as far as maybe forming a committee and providing more resources like on the website for a lot of this stuff. Actually, speaking of resources, I think did we put the slide up about the resources? Okay, so this is this is a whole bunch of resources that we compiled together. Definitely take some pictures, and we can also like send the slides out, I think, to share the links. There's a lot of like really good tools in here that I think would help everybody. Some of the stuff we haven't even done yet. Excited about the treasure hunt, which I'm going to make our whole company do next month. And I also heard a lot from the RIT pollution prevention people in a few different talks, and I think there's a lot of really cool resources there, especially for waste assessment. So I think, excited to try some of the resources too in here.
And speaking of poking at people and being annoying, I'm probably going to do that after this session. There has to be, on all this kind of stuff, you have to have the follow through. So it's great that we're all drinking out of compostable cups, but why is the one place to compost all the way upstairs so that everyone's filling the trash bins with the compostable cups? So it's like, you have to see it all the way through. And you become the annoying person at that point. So.
Great. Well, that gives me a great idea. I say we adjourn this session and we go on to the party of the gathering. We thank our speakers and thank you all for attending.